everyone, and welcome to another conversation in our series In Conversation With. Today, I am in conversation with Diana Niepce, a choreographer, dancer, and writer from Lisbon. And we will have today time to talk about her practice and also this situation which we do in the past weeks in this series, meeting and talking with colleagues living in different places across Europe, and also we talked with colleagues in New York and Auckland, New Zealand, and Tehran, Iran. So in different places, so we also reflect about the situation that we are experiencing at the moment as artists and citizens. So that's how we will do it also today. Hi, Diana.
Hello.
Welcome. So I would like to actually start our talk today by reading a part of your poem that is titled 2014. And with this, I would like us to start today. Is this okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so later maybe you can also tell us about the poem and where it was published and that part of your practice. But for now, I would just like to start with reading one part of it. I only ever truly got to know my body when it turned into a stranger. It wasn't during ballet classes while doing battement tendu. It wasn't while I practiced Graham contractions. When I found my balance on point, nor when I catch dropped on aerial silks or barrel rolled on the trapeze. It was only when I was forced to consider the action of drinking water from a glass. I want to dance, but my body can no longer dance. Every day I seek for the sparkle within the strangeness. I am what is strange. I tread the imperfect path. Dancing begins with walking, and thus I take my first step. For me, reading this poem, it was a very strong and beautiful way to see how you think or how you reinterpret what dance is and how you make dance from your specific experience and context in which you live and work and make efforts to make dance work. So I would like to ask you if you could share with us more about these challenges that you experience as a female artist, choreographer and dancer, working and living in the context in which you do.
So I wrote that poem 6 years later after my injury. When someone invited me to write in this magazine about the body, and it was a lot of artists that did a work about the body, and I needed to pick a part of my body. So it was a members or the head or the torso that you should choose as an artist. And I was thinking, I usually write prose. I don't write as a poet usually. But then it was like a manifesto that I was doing, an ethnographic story about my body as a dancer. Because what my struggle with the system and with in Portugal as a dancer choreographer and with a disability, it's actually to be outside the norm, a body that reflects a manifesto by himself. And also I like to be in this state of revolution, of provoking the system. I don't like to be in a safety zone. I don't see myself in that way, but I never did. So actually, when I was a non-disabled dancer, I was working also as an acrobat and in the limits of the body, in the limits of the spirit, and in this in-between states. So what showed me after my accident, it was that it wasn't so different that I felt before. It was a state of being outside the norm and outside a box, like people want to put us. So I needed to reinvent my body, because I was no longer that virtuous body. And I became a quadriplegic, totally paralyzed since the neck down. I was lucky because then my injury didn't stuck, and I'm a privileged disabled that become better every day, and I still do my practice every day, and I'm recovering from the injury. But this brings me also a body that I'm never stuck. I'm always recovering. I'm always challenging myself and dealing with the challenge that I propose to my body. But thinking the body has an identity for me, or my body, it brings me always this ethnographic body that I have, this state of what was before and what is now, and what can it be. But it was very strong, this sense of immobility and isolation in a hospital when I had the accident. Of waking up in a body that I couldn't understand, and a body that didn't understand me, and the feeling that this is not my body, is a different body that I don't understand. So to reinvent a body that you don't understand, you do that when you are very young as a kid. But I was 28 years old and disconnected with this love that I always had with the body. And then it was a shock for me to understand how society patterns comprehend people with disability, or how they discriminate people, or what you choose to see when you are in the streets. So I start thinking the body, the non-normative body, the body that is a political subject. And I try to reconstruct my body as a professional dancer, but also to relearn this identity through the trauma, and how you can develop the work with the body that is not actually what is the standards in a university of dance, or how people see a body of a dancer. So the system started to see me as less, and the other artists made me feel less, and my co-workers that usually I worked before. So I started to do this inclusive work. That was a huge school to me also, to relearn the body and what I could do. But then as my own work, I decided to show what people don't want to see, because I believe as an artist you have a huge voice. So even as a writer and dancer, I start to do that.
But it's interesting for me this moment when you say that the accident also made this rupture in your professional career as a dancer, and then you said that you then needed to reinvent or find the way how to continue with the work. So this moment in relation to the structures of dance that you knew or that you were going back to. Can you maybe reflect a little bit on these frictions and problems, why you then see it as a rupture? Because then you said later you started to look for more inclusive practices. So this seems, I'm not so familiar with the context in Portugal, but I am with other places in Europe, and I know, for example, in Germany, it's very divided, the scene of contemporary dance and the scene of inclusive dance or theater practices. So they are like a split, and like for many people, and only recently some people are problematizing this on a systemic level. But I see that it is still not being treated really on the systemic level. It's more like through some projects that try to connect these scenes. So I would like if you can share with us a bit more through your experience also how it is in the context of contemporary dance structures in Portugal and in Lisbon. It's in Lisbon, if I assume it's where you were mainly making your work.
I'm based in Lisbon, and mainly my work is in Lisbon. Also because not all the places in Portugal are this kind of work. And so, but yeah, you have like 3 major companies of inclusion in Portugal: 1 theater, 2 dance, and another one that is in the islands, and
Madeira,
Madeira. And then it's very divided, the system, but now some projects are getting more big, also because it's a bit fashionable now to be on doing with working with the margins and like, you know, refugees or disabled or queer, or now is a bit on vogue. But when I had the accident, I started to work in Gala with Jerome Bell. It was my first job. And when I wrote 2014 poem, I wrote as I was in 2014, not now. So in that time, what I realized is like, the dancers they don't see me as a dancer anymore. I was only disabled. So they made me feel less and inferior as the other artists. And some people actually, they ask, oh yeah, you dance because you have social benefits. You know, no, it's not true, you know. What I do, it's not that. Or like as a disabled artist, you don't receive money, or you receive less, or you... But also Portugal had this kind of very precarious sector, as in arts, in general arts. So with the crisis in 2018, this kind of art with community, it was a way to escape, to don't pay people and to do the work.
What do you mean?
They will bring, you know, it's like you work with community, you bring community experience in art.
The
you don't need to pay.
Are not paid, you mean?
And the participants are not
paid. They do it for the experience, or for
the experience, for inclusive, for create a new sense of artistic. Or it's like you're gonna work with unemployed people to bring them an experience in the theater, but you don't pay them, but they are unemployed. So it was like a lobby, you know, like, so it's disability, it's also in the middle of this. It's everything that is on the margins. But these major companies, they had a 20 years work, and I collaborate with most of them. But I just try to do things a bit different, because what I would like to have, it will be an approximation of non-normative dancers with normative dancers, or disabled with non-disabled, and to reflect about this hybridism state of both of them, that they are not very different. Like, so this is what I'm trying to do with my programs, because I'm curating now a formation for disabled artists with emergent artists. So it's to bring also this political state, or this kind of body has a manifesto that they should have more voice.
And this is a program in Lisbon?
Yeah, it's in Lisbon, 8 months, but now it's with COVID a bit frozen, like most of my projects. But this is what I would like to have, because I still feel this market this sector very divided. And if only the artists that work with inclusion will keep working with disabled artists, it doesn't bring bridge, or it will not change what's the problems of the sector as artists, or as a disabled artist, or in the disability sector. But also I'm the only creator that can create art in Portugal with disability, you know, so with money and paid, and with has a choreographer you deserve, I'm the only one now. So probably I'm the only one that also have this vision, has disability, has a statement and political view, has artistic objects in the artistic object. But I work with all of the companies, so we try to make this also awareness with the other companies and theaters and structures. But it's still very hard, because also Portugal is not very accessible. The venues, the theaters, and we are still fighting about ramps. So it's what usually I say, I still fighting about ramps. So
I understand. I mean, listening to you, it brings me back again to this part of your poem that I was reading at the beginning. This, when you say about being forced to consider the action of drinking a glass of water again. And for me, why it makes me think of this is that there is so much of actions that we know and that we are used to do in our field. Of course, in general and in our life, but now I'm relating to this problem that you are talking about in the field of contemporary dance. So many things that we know how to do them, and we stick to them, and somehow in this poem and what you are talking about, I see this importance of asking to really reconsider these actions and try to learn them from beginning, meaning to unlearn everything that we know and let go of it in order to really find a way and learn about the new way. And this is this political aspect that you are talking about from your experience. And I think this is like, this speaks so strongly to me also through this poem, but also through the projects that you are trying to do. And I think I'm really curious how it will go in a context such as the one in Lisbon, that at the same time is challenging, very challenging. As you say, you are fighting for ramps that maybe in some other cities in Europe is a struggle that was maybe 10 years ago or 3 years ago. but I'm curious about, because these situations and maybe complicated circumstances and conditions at the same time with this vision that you are describing also can do and bring a lot exactly in restructuring how we work. And I somehow also relate to this based also on my experience of making work with my colleagues with learning disabilities and without learning disabilities in Novi Sad in Serbia, where at the same time something that seems impossible, by thinking in this political way of structuring the dance field, it can bring really important changes. And this I really find very interesting, how you articulate it in different aspects of your work.
But I don't know if what I feel is like I always have more questions, you know, like you never find the right answer. So, but what I understood with this 6 years of reinventing myself, it was that I need to be in this unbalanced situation, like in the risk, like, and also in order to challenge the system. What I started to do, it's like, okay, they don't want to hear me. I have a voice on stage, so this I'm going to show you through the dance. So when last year I did a piece that was 12,979 days, it's the name. Yes. And it was with a group of people also with disability, with mental disability. How you say? It's cognitivity disability and physical
in English,
disability.
They use the term with learning disabilities, one of the terms, yes.
And then with some normalized dancers, I use this term, but I feel like we are never very normal. So, but yeah, and what I tried to do with the piece, it was like to show how we have assumptions that are not very true when we see someone. So the piece was very strong because it was with a lot of struggles and some moments of violence, and also about this exposure of the body without wheelchairs or without stuff, you know, like the true body and the true self, with very little clothes. So and what we understood, and what my producer and I and the people understood, it's like the piece was showing what we all do, that we are all the time discriminating each other or judging people or assuming something wrong, because we just by the look assume something, and that's not most of the time it's not real or true. So with the piece, I was also challenging people, like, why you see someone in a wheelchair and you think it's just the pretty girl or whatever, or it's not violent, or it's not strong, or so I shift these roles of
and challenge the stereotypes, and
like a big man that was really stepping on me, and I'm very small and very twisted, so, and he was just on top of me, like these kind of figures that you can, okay, why I understand the body, that only that normalized body could just hold the disabled one, or so the piece, I'll bring also the audience to the stage, and like everyone was dancing, but it was this feeling of being all the time assuming something that was wrong, you know, like why someone in a disability state should be inferior, or
challenging the power relations.
The power relations, yeah. So I tried to do this, and also I tried to bring accessibility measures to my pieces, like with audio description and sign language, because it's a thing that we are still fighting. I'm still fighting. I'm now the face that is fighting this. So
yeah. How is it now when you mentioned these different ways to access dance pieces? When you bring them in the venues where you make and show work, do you manage to go a step further in making these venues also realize how necessary this is, and if they also take over or start doing something about it, or it's still mainly like just planting this idea in different venues and developing it at the beginning?
In my work, I try to put every time, even if my budget gets lower or something, but I try to put, because I think it's important to show it's possible, because most of the time I feel like it's not just the structures, the artists feel like it will be less artistic, or it will put the work in a wrong position, and I try to do every time, but even it's very expensive here, so my budget gets very, very difficult to work it. But now after that piece, I got a producer, so my life is a bit easier in that situation. But most of the venues are the big theaters, they do it. They put audio description and sign language, and they try to fight in a way to create accessibility measures, physical accessibility measures, and also for people with cognitive disabilities. But it's still only in the main theaters, because we had this big work with Access Cultura, and it's an association that works and gives feedbacks and debates and courses about this. And I'm associated to them, and I try to fight with theaters too. They do this to the audience, but it's still a very fragile subject, because most of the time, if it's outside the main area, like Lisbon or Porto, they only do it if it's in my show or something like that. Or it's still like a way to show that, oh, we are so good, we are doing this. Or it's like, let's make the weekend for disabled people, something like this. And I feel that if it's not a common practice, it's not well done. So,
but it's important to insist.
Yeah, I keep insisting, but now I feel like because I insisted so much in the past 3 years, that sometimes now they are apologizing to me. I'm saying, okay, don't apologize to me, apologize to society. It's like I'm not the face of accessibility. But it's good when you see like that's working. And most of the time I present myself, okay, I'm a dancer and choreographer and writer, and I bother a lot of theaters.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also a statement like to don't be in the safe zone.
I like I read somewhere also this that you said that it is a risky thing to do, but that's to make noise, something like this. You said it is a risky thing to do, but that's the only way you know it.
I know it, yeah.
Yeah.
And also I feel like in art you shouldn't be in this kind of safe zone, We should challenge ourselves, like where is the limit? Who say this is the right way? What's society? Who is saying this is what should happen?
Yes.
So I'm all the time with these questions around me, like, because I don't believe this, we need to reinvent the system, and the system is stuck. And at least in Portugal, we are trying for so long to redefine this system of support the arts, because it's working in this state of neoliberal way, you know, like that the structures and the presentation spaces have all the power. So the creations are, they lose their voice and their strength. So this is a major problem that we are fighting for forever, but I believe as artists we need to challenge society. And this is the same what I usually say to theaters. If you only put this kind of virtuous bodies of very artistic and very acrobatic and thinner, and what do you think society will mirror? It's the same thing with the models, like only that body, it's the perfect, acceptable, and the others. Most of society are not perfect. Most of people, like.
But this, in your work, one way how you problematize this is also through how naked body plays a role in your work and how you bring it on stage. Can you maybe say a little bit about this?
I'm very fascinated about skin, you know. I love skin. I don't know, I have this thing, I always had. And I think the body is a very beautiful thing. It's a very beautiful artistic object, has himself, without stuff, you know. We are all the time with clothes and chairs, and because it's a way that I don't know, it's cultural, you know, like they say we need to be fast and to be all the time at the same time and doing the same thing in that way, and you need to drink water in that rhythm, and it's like, it looks like we are all the same, and it's very weird for me, like why we need to be. It looks like I was growing up to be something that I couldn't achieve, because it was like we lose our identities, even the bodies, because if you do differently, it's like you are not okay, like it's something wrong with you. So this failing of exposing the body, exposing the rhythm of the body, and with the clothes I feel like we lose the breathing, the rhythm. So I have this feeling of exposure that I like to show, that I like to present in me. So and people that work with me, they are all free to don't show the body at all. It's not a thing that I ask. It's like, what I like to see is vulnerability, or themselves, or identities, and bodies that move, and how is their natural movement. So I try to not create like a character or something. Of course, my body reflects a lot of vocabulary of dance that I learn in my life, like also because I work as an acrobat before. I also use that balance and counterweight and this kind of challenge. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I need to put in charge.
Yeah.
But yes, so I use this exposure as a way and to show how the human body can be beautiful or ugly or raw, or like how imperfect bodies we have. And that's also fascinating. Like the body himself, it's a very beautiful thing to see. And I feel like when we don't see disabled bodies naked, even in the beach, like you need to use a swimming suit. If you do topless, it's like it's something wrong with this disabled, maybe she have a problem. Like, you are not allowed to do a lot of things as a disabled. So showing the body, I feel it's a very important state to show to the world or to society how beautiful and sexual and exactly like other bodies can be a disabled body. But actually it's not just about disability, because it doesn't matter to me the idea of having a disability or not. It's the exposure, how the body moves and how he crawl, how you connect the floor, and what's this body. And I don't see that much here, at least in Portugal or whatever, but I have this fascination of the bodies and naked bodies. I feel like they are very plastic and sculptural and political. And it's when you have another layers when they are without clothes. And also I'm working now about the idea of intimacy, because I feel like society lost this sense of intimacy. So I'm trying to connect this, and now it's very hard because COVID is not allowing me to work this, because now intimacy, it's online, and this is very weird.
Yeah.
So I like to work the contact and this idea of relations, and I was trying to do a performance with the audience also, and this idea of exposure of the performers and the audience. And I'm gonna keep working this when I'm allowed, but when
how is it now when you say that this pandemic crisis also, how I understand, interrupted also your research process? But can you tell us a bit at the moment in this and in this period how this situation affects your artistic practice, and how do you deal with it?
So I have I'm frozen at the moment, but I'm doing an investigation in hybrid bodies and monster bodies, and for my thesis. So I've been doing investigation and reflecting about philosophers of performing arts, and also reflecting about this idea of body outside the norm. But I have my formation that I'm an artistic director, and it's frozen, and I have 3 creations of my own that are frozen, and I'm collaborating with 6 other artists. So I'm in more 6 creations, and I don't know very well how can I do everything. It's going to be very hard, because it's I'm not also physically available to do so much work that will, because then I will be rehearsing for 20 hours per day. I don't know how many, but and that's not possible. And so I'm like what I said, it's I froze stuff, but without knowing if that will be possible to do. But because they are not cancellating, they are delaying.
Yeah, but it is a lot projects, a lot of work. What I hear, but how is it with all these colleagues? Do you discuss together, like what is the possible way?
We are been working together, like to. We have meetings, we create an action, a cooperative action to try to help each other, because the social security didn't help. It was they give like some money for people, for normal citizens, and because we are in this kind of as a freelancers, you have this kind of intermittent state. in your career. So most of the people are not contemplated in this support. Also the support I received, it was like 15 euros. So because they give me 90 euros and then I pay 75 from taxes. So from that. So it's not working. So we create a cooperative action to help the ones that are struggling with food and.
But this action is between you who collaborate in projects together, or is it broader as like independent freelance artists at the independent scene?
It's for all the sector. We are trying to unite the sector in an action with meetings, national meetings.
Like online meetings and
online meetings on Zoom. And trying to create this cooperative action to also to create awareness to the Minister of Culture, because they the only support they got us, it was you could apply to create something, and we still don't have any answer about that also. So also like technicians and all the others wouldn't be in this kind of support, so we are trying to create awareness, but it's very hard because this representative way that we found, it's also another solution, because it's like the privileged are helping the most poor ones, and I feel for as a system is actually quite sad to happen, like when the government don't realize this is a problem. So, but we are trying to
compensate in some
compensate this situation. But it's I don't know, like, because the minister now wants to open the theaters, and I'm in a risky position. So it's. They are opening the theaters, but without saying what we need to do, what measures we should do, like without any support during the quarantine. And now we need to create something, and it's very weird. I don't know, like how we're gonna do that without any kind of support. It brings in a lot of anxieties to the arts sector. We also create a manifesto that all the artists are now in white online, on Facebook, Instagram, in every account. So we said the cultural is in white until we have answers.
That means as action, you stop like presenting and creating content, and or what does it mean? Like you are all in white.
We are requiring. We are trying to stop most of the conceptual artists. They are stopping. They stopped the online things and online. I just need to put charging. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I like also this image that comes of a very different body.
It's an hybrid
between different bodies.
We put the picture on white in every network, and we have the hashtag United for the Cultural sector, and stopping this online streaming and requiring answers to the minister. And but it's some people are still doing, and the privileged, some artists are doing, still working without receiving. And also because when the quarantine started, all the Portuguese artists start to put everything online. Like, it was like, okay, people, okay, I know you are desperate, but it was so much information, and it was too much. And then some people realized that they need to stop, but some of them didn't. And with this manifesto, we are the minister keep giving speeches about normalizing the sector and without giving answers or measures. So we are.
It's good to hear, because also this talks that I initiated was also to try to different colleagues and also hear how we are all dealing with this situation. Because last week when I talked with Veneziana, Vivi and Irini, they also told me about the initiative in Athens and in Greece. And also last week there was a protest also in the streets from the independent scene. And for example, in Berlin, there was the city responded in a way that I don't think any other city responded in Europe in that way, supporting artists. But also for me, it was interesting to see that the initiatives of the independent dance scene were also ready to react and mobilize the scene and inform everyone and take care to give everyone as much as possible information how to deal with this and how to apply for this program. Of course, there are many problems that came with it as well. That also says a lot about how independent artists, even in situations like this, still choose to be competitive and selfish and try to get as much as possible for themselves. So I think we are, as unfortunately, always dealing with these problems. But this, what you say, also initiatives like this one also point to those individuals or these positions that then some people don't identify or align with initiatives that are advocating for the scene, or that are more based on solidarity rather than on competition, and keeping the model that they believe will give them more stability or something. So I think it's good to hear how everyone is dealing with this situation. And for me, with these talks and also after, I hope to manage to articulate all these concerns and share these experiences, that we can then really see, at least in this niche that we are operating within the contemporary dance scene, that maybe we can insist on and bring some changes exactly through bringing forces together.
In Portugal, they are also trying to do some manifests, but it's on the street, but you are not allowed to put more than 5 people together. So, so it's they are making groups, but it's like, for me, I feel very risky because I have lungs problems. So I'll keep my fight in other way. And, but yeah. I feel it's very important to hear also the solutions of other countries. But what you said about these, about artists that don't understand very well this, because they believe in other way of art also. But it's like, when I had my accident, it was what happened to me. I was in a very fragile position, and then I understood if it wouldn't be in a solidarity state, I wouldn't survive. So actually only could be a dancer again, or an artist, a creator, or whatever, a citizen, with the help of other artists. So I believe also I try to bring this state of generosity in my work, and I like to work with trust and with this feeling of trust.
Yes.
And So I think it's what we are trying now is to collect everyone, because this sector it was always very divided, probably like in everywhere else, and but the government is not very aware of our condition, and but for me I'm having fun because I'm seeing people fighting, and this is new, you know, like the sector is getting collected. When I started to see on Facebook, like all my Facebook pictures of my friends, it was white, like a lot of them, and it was like quite emotional, you know, like this feeling of okay, now we are connected. If it work, I don't know if it will work, but it's what I also try to do in my work. It's like, okay, fight people, be in the risk, be in the limits, and if it doesn't work, it's no problem. Well, we will find another connections or.
Yes, I agree.
It's this feeling.
It's important to keep.
But also this
trying.
feeling of being isolated, and for me, it's not very new. You know, I was like, for over a year when I had the accident, feeling like disconnected to the world. So I needed to have time to reorganize with my friends, with my body, with my, what is this like?
But still, I understand this, and this brings me to the question. You know that I ask each artist about the question. And last week, Veneziana, Vivi, and Irini, they have a question, and it's for you. How this past 2 months influenced or changed your perception of time?
The only thing I realized that I'm all the time late, you know, like even if I'm at home. Like I have a huge problem with this, like because I'm obsessed with this idea of having an hour to do the stuff, and it's like it's very hard for a body that it's not it's a body outside the norm again, and so it's like this idea of I need to keep the time of a normal body, and that doesn't work, you know. So it's for me, it was like, okay, you're gonna be late forever. Don't stress about it. But yeah, I'm also very obsessed with this idea of perfection, or I don't know if it's called perfection, but to do the things right or in everything. So then being late for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and then for 1 hour, and now it's this new sense of time that okay, you do 1 hour later, and then it brings me this idea of a snowball that you are all the time late, you know, and the never-ending tasks that will show up. And yeah, it's also, I'm trying to reflect about what you achieve and not achieve, and I was in a big moment of my career, like a boom, and then everything frozen. So it was like a good moment to realize that I need also to learn to stop and to say no, and to don't overlapping stuff, because I have this, I want to do everything, and then I drive myself crazy because I don't have time to sleep or eating in the Uber or
this way of managing time and organizing time that, as you said, like comes from the idea of or is dictated from one norm, or how normativity what it does through also very normative time organization. Then you experience these consequences really on the level of the body, that is exhausting or is putting it you
like
in
also this idea, you know, like I can walk, but I'm a very slowly walker. So in order to do all the projects, I usually use the chair to be able to arrive there more fast and to do the stuff. But also in my social life, I need to say, okay, do you mind if I go with the crutches? But it's going to take some time to arrive to the place, or to walk into the car, or to, it's like this permission to have a different timing. And now I'm allowing myself to have a different timing more. So it's like, okay, do in your own rhythm, go walking and do. But it's also good for me to understand that I don't need to be all the time in the time zone that society says that I should be. That it's no problem to be more slower. And so yeah, this is what I'm learning, is like to also to change my mind setting about timing, that you need all the time be fast and to do a lot of things and to be all the time working and rehearsing, and that I don't believe it's a very healthy way to be also, but it's very hard to change the mind setting of a workaholic person that try. But I think everyone feels a bit like this now, in a way or other.
Yes, yeah, I guess in one way or the other, it is the time and space are challenged, as those the way how we you knew them, or how we relate to them. But how about your question? Maybe slowly we can come to an end in this talk. Maybe to
it's like because this is also very particular to disabled artists and makers. So my question is like, is this feeling of isolation different from another feeling of isolation? Because I feel this is the question, actually.
Thank you.
Isolation is a very present thing for people with disability. So also it makes me very sad sometimes to understand that people lives isolated. And so yeah, how this changed.
Yes. I will bring this question to the next artist that I will talk next week, and I think it is great that we also leave this question for all of those who are watching and listening to us. And I would like to say thank you for this talk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I'm glad that we had a chance to meet like this. And hopefully,
I hope we meet one day on live.
Yes, me too.
Not on screen.
Not on screen, but in real. How to say? Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, and we keep in contact.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.